Know what to eat, but find yourself not eating it. Perhaps you've been on diets and off again and just wonder why you can't stick to them. The Eating For You podcast, hosted by me, Sally Ann Pisk, will show you what's been missing so you can enjoy a healthier way of eating that lasts. Hi, Sally Ann with you again today, and I am super excited. I know I say this every episode, but today we're celebrating my favourite day of the health calendar year, and that is International No Diet Day. So if this is the first time you're tuning in with me, I'm an accredited practicing dietitian specialising in women's health, weight and well-being. With over 30 years of experience, I have certainly seen every diet fad come and go. So International No Diet Day is a day to celebrate your unique self, to take care of yourself without restricting food or feeling guilty over anything that you choose to put in your mouth and eat mindfully. So in this episode, we're going to be recapping on the hidden costs of dieting. I'm going to be talking about the alternatives to dieting and how we start reframing our thoughts about health so we're not focused on weight, we're focused on health and well-being. So we can all feel comfortable in our own skin and just get on and enjoy life. International No Diet Day was started in 1992 by Mary Evans Young. She had recovered from an eating disorder herself and had become concerned about young people struggling with their weight, their body image, and their self-esteem. So she decided to ditch that diet, and that was the sticker that the small gathering of people wore on this first celebration of a way of eating that doesn't rely on following someone else's rules. International No Diet Day is now an international movement, including the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, India, Israel, Denmark, Sweden, and Brazil. And I'm sure it's in many other countries as well. So the goals of International No Diet Day really won't surprise you. It's about challenging diet culture and unrealistic beauty standards, raising awareness about the dangers and also the ineffectiveness of commercial diets. And I'm certainly going to be tapping into that today, but also promoting an acceptance of body diversity and ending weight discrimination, sizeism, and fat phobia. Back in episode 38, I had the pleasure of having a discussion with Sally Badarik, who is an expert in helping people live in larger bodies. And we discussed in detail weight stigma and how just below the surface we can have this weight bias for ourselves and for others that we're not really aware of. And in this episode, we really talk about ways of letting go of that bias once and for all. So help us spread the word. Use the hashtag No Diet Day. Share this episode of the Eating For You podcast. Share any of our posts on non-diet approaches to eating so we can all help others enjoy food without guilt, without weight worries, and just as I said in the beginning, get on with life without carrying this burden around of being so focused on food, weight, and health all of the time. Even though I'm so excited and many other practitioners around the world are excited about this non-diet message, some critics really believe that by not providing rigid, strict guidelines, low-calorie diets, we're posing serious risk for people living in larger bodies. However, this movement is very much about removing the stigma, removing the discrimination. And I'm going to be talking a little bit more about weight and health, or as I say, can we please talk about body composition rather than weight? Because your weight doesn't equal your health. Your weight doesn't equal your well-being, and it certainly doesn't equal your worth. And in an earlier episode, 96, I really do explain why I really want us to be all talking about body composition rather than weight, because it's much more meaningful to us. Because weight, as I said, you could be healthy or unhealthy at the same weight, depending on your body composition. Now, the other thing you've heard me talk about, and I'm certainly going to be explaining in more detail in our International No Diet online workshop, which is happening on 6th of May. But I want to run through these 10 main concerns that I have about diets. It causes your weight to yo-yo. You don't actually get to sustain a healthier weight. What it can do is reduce your metabolic rate. What that means is that it becomes more difficult for you to maintain a lower weight. There's other negative health consequences associated with dieting as well. And the real reason, or one of the real reasons diets don't work, is they don't actually help you change your relationship with food, your thoughts and beliefs about food, and your eating habits. And I know myself from personal experience when I was dieting, but I hear it all the time from my clients and women that I speak with. Restriction leads to overeating. And then there's all the confusion and overwhelm about all of these different nutrition and fad diet messages that are floating around. And it's often termed these days nutrition noise. But also, when we follow someone else's rules, we're actually overriding our natural and intuitive way to eat. We all know how to do this, but we just need help to get back in contact with a natural way of eating that's healthy, enjoyable, and sustainable. Hours of our life lost because of dieting. One, I will share this little snippet because it's unbelievable. On average, adults spend 17 years trying to lose weight. That's not even achieving a weight that they're comfortable with. Then there's the emotional roller coaster where how we feel depends on the number on the scales. And then there's that sense of failure that is not your fault. And as I said, I'm going to be tapping into all of this in our Beyond Diets, the missing link to confident eating and healthy weight. And that's happening on May 6th at 7 p.m. Sydney time. So if you're watching us on YouTube, you are most welcome to use the QR code to register for this transformative event. And I must say, this event is bringing all of the most popular and powerful trainings I have ever shared in a live webinar before. And I need to let you know, this is the only live workshop we have scheduled for this year. So the links to join are included with this episode's notes. So the other thing I want to remind us all of is that our body weight is not just related to food. Our genetics is known to contribute to 30 to 50% to our risk of developing obesity. Sleep, poor quality sleep, impacts our appetite hormones. Our ghrelin levels increase. We feel hungrier. We reach for those high-fat, sugary foods. And then our leptin, it just doesn't work as well. The stop button doesn't come on as soon. So not only are we reaching for higher calorie or kilojoule foods, we eat more of them because we're tired. Stress. Well, stress impacts us all in different ways, and 50% of the people whose appetite is impacted by stress, half of these will lose their appetite, but the other half will feel hungrier and again reach for those high fat, high sugary foods. Movement is important for our health and well-being, but rather than focus on weight loss and punishing yourself, find movement that you enjoy. It's important for our digestion. It's important for our mental health and mood. And just feeling strong and happy in our bodies. Medications can impact our weight, and it's really important to talk to your doctors about any medications that may be causing you to gain weight. Now, food processing. This is separate to food itself, and I love to use the example of the humble potato. And I know that's a vegetable that has a bit of a bad name, and undeservedly, because we can use boiled and baked potatoes in so many delicious recipes, and they're very nutritious. Where the calories can sneak in is when we're having fried chips, and especially French fries. Those thin little pieces of potato absorb a lot of oil. So it does worry me when I look at some of the Australian research that indicates the most eaten the most eaten vegetable is actually French fries. So food processing has an impact on whole foods, but then of course we've got our sugary drinks, we've got our sugary foods, we've got our highly salted foods as well. So whole foods are not the issue. And even having French fries some of the time is not an issue either. But if it's your main source of vegetable, then it's not going to be helpful for your overall health and well-being. Non-hunger eating. This has got nothing to do with food. This has got to do with our relationship with food. And this is certainly something that I am going to be talking more about in our workshop for International No Diet Day. But if you know you've got a non-hunger eating habit, then don't blame yourself. We all develop habits to get us through tough times, and some of us lean on food to help us with those big uncomfortable emotions that we don't know how to deal with. But it is possible to move on from emotional and comfort eating habits. What all of this means is that knowledge about healthy food and eating doesn't equate to lasting changes to your eating habits. And with this persistent drive, especially among young women, to be thin, we can see why unhealthy or extreme dieting practices come about. And this can affect men as well. It's not just women. And the rise of social media and wellness influencers has popularized trends like clean eating, plant-based diets, fasting, and the consumption of superfoods. And it has contributed to anxiety, reduced confidence, and dissatisfaction around food choices and body image. So can we make the leap from thinness ideal to body diversity? Historically, Western culture has equated health with thinness, also attractiveness. It's become a moral virtue to be thin. And this has led to the rise of the diet culture. And that's a system of beliefs that really idealizes thin bodies, stigmatizes fatness, and moralizes foods as good or bad. In the late 20th and early 21st centuries, these ideals were amplified by the media, fashion, and influencers, whether they're coming from a movie, music, or social media background. And this makes dieting and weight loss central to social expectations, especially for women. But as I've said before, it affects men as well. And as I said, social media and influencers have intensified these pressures, promoting quick fixes, restrictive eating, and those awful before and after transformations. And I say awful because we don't even know if they're legitimate. Anything can be done with images these days. And to promote something that's unrealistic for you, to me, is unethical. What this meant for Judy coming through this transformation of being stuck on diets, knowing that she had a comfort eating habit, being told as early as 12 that she was too fat. This is part of Judy's story. But in our latest conversation in episode 112, she shares how mindful eating has actually helped her navigate the ups and downs of life without reaching for food. So for Judy and many other ladies that I work with, just understanding that food is neither good nor bad, that she is not good or bad depending on what she eats, and that her body is not her worth, has made her a much healthier, happier, and lighter person. And what Bev's story really reminds us is that you are never too old to change. It is never too late to change. Bev was around 85 when she joined one of our programs. And I am just so happy for her because she has found freedom from those strict food rules that had dominated her life ineffectively for over 40 years. So it's never too late to change. It is possible to have a positive relationship with food and feel comfortable in your body. And Anne reminded us in episode 9 that the scales are not your friend. One of the things that Anne shares in this episode is that she actually loved not having to weigh herself. And she realized in the past that her commitment to healthy eating had been overridden by what was happening on the scales. And that's that emotional roller coaster I was talking about earlier. You know, our feeling of ourself and our feeling of enjoyment in life was dependent upon the number on the scales. Anne also knew she had a comfort eating habit. But what she shares in this episode, she says, I actually crave for vegetables now, not the ice cream, not the chocolate or the potato crisps. So through mindful eating, which we're going to talk about a little bit further on, you can resume a natural way of eating that is not dominated or crowded or restricted by food rules. So, just a short recap. Health is not body weight. Wellbeing doesn't require a diet. Changing habits rather than stressing about the number on the scales is a way to transform your relationship with food and your body for good. So, as we've mentioned, dieting has become the normal way of eating. And I want to take a look at what has contributed to this restrictive way of eating becoming what we think is normal and expected. Food and body size during this time became moral virtues. But now, as we move on, we are starting to consider food in a different way from a sustainability and ethical viewpoint, which is fabulous for the health of our planet. But I do have some reservations that if these food rules become too strict and too powerful, then they can set up a new unhealthy dynamic with food. I'm all for eating local food, organic food if you can, growing your own food, but it's not possible for everyone. But if we all can make some choices to help keep our planet healthy, then I'm all for it. But I don't want it to become a new dogma. So looking at what's been going on with food, thinness as an ideal and moral virtue is gradually converting into an acceptance of body diversity. We've got a long way to go with this, but there is a movement that we can support to make us all happy in the bodies that we were born into. Dieting and weight loss has definitely been viewed as a status, but we are moving more to that focus on holistic well-being. And food in the past, and I have to say it's still present now, was very much labelled as good or bad foods, which of course then carried over to us feeling good or bad depending on what we ate. Whereas now there's an emphasis on non-restrictive eating, looking at foods that nourish our cells in all ways is really important. The media-driven beauty standards is starting to get infiltrated by social media activism for inclusivity. And we can all help to do this. As I said, one thing you can do is share the link to this episode of our podcast. And whereas weight being the main health indicator, we now understand and talk about health as being multifaceted. And I will say it again, can we please talk about body composition rather than weight? Because that is so much more meaningful. We're also starting to view food and how we can look at sustainable eating practices, not only for our health, but the environmental health as well. And we can make more ethical and sustainable food choices. Caution here, don't get too stuck with the rules in this area though. So while this is all really positive and giving us hope, I know that our software in our brain and in our heart remains weight focused. And what concerns me in some ways is that restricting food through willpower is now being replaced with the expectation that you need to take an appetite suppressant or some form of medication that's going to decrease your desire for eating and decrease your weight. Now, again, there's a flip side to this. These medications can be very beneficial for people who are very unwell and need to lose weight. But please just reflect on your drive to lose weight and whether it is healthy for you or not. So now I want to dive into an area that I'm very passionate about, and that's alternative approaches to dieting that focus on health and not just weight. So mindful and intuitive eating are the foundation for the eating for you approach. Mindful eating encourages us to pay attention to hunger and fullness cues, to eat slowly and savor food without distractions, which can improve our satisfaction with eating, but also reduce overeating. Intuitive eating rejects all of those restrictive food rules and instead promotes eating in response to physical hunger and enjoyment, helping you to develop a healthier relationship with food. The weight inclusive and health at every size approaches accept that people naturally come in many different body shapes, sizes, and they focus on improving health behaviors like balanced eating, regular movement, and self-care regardless of your weight. And the emphasis is on reducing health risks and enhancing well-being rather than pursuing weight loss as the primary goal. And as I said before, just because your weight changes doesn't mean you're healthier. Now, as I mentioned earlier, depending on your genetics and your body composition, your size or your weight may or may not be contributing to poor health. And the health at every size approach can be confusing to navigate because sometimes the message comes out as it doesn't matter what weight you are healthy. And we all know that's not correct. And I certainly worked with clients whose health would benefit by losing weight. But we just know that focusing on a diet and trying to lose weight, watching that number on the scales, was not going to work for them because they had been there so many times. So whilst the health at every size can be confusing to navigate, I agree with the principle of taking care of ourselves regardless of the size of our bodies. Another approach is just to prioritize a wide variety of foods from all food groups, including plenty of vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and lean proteins. And this will support your overall health without focusing on calorie or kilojoule restriction or weight loss. And trying new foods and recipes can make healthy eating more enjoyable and sustainable. So that might be just a lovely little challenge to take on board, is think about a new recipe that you could try this week or a new food that you could try. Small, achievable lifestyle changes is the way to go. It's got nothing to do with restriction or willpower. Setting small realistic goals such as walking an extra bus stop Cooking a new recipe or adding one more serve of vegetables in each day can lead to meaningful improvements that you can sustain. And these changes are more likely to be maintained over the long term compared to extreme or restrictive diets or those total makeovers we often see on the media or social media in particular. Enjoyable movement is so important to help us feel well. So rather than focusing on exercise to burn calories, think about it in a way of how it makes you feel. Do you feel stronger? Do you feel more relaxed? Do you feel invigorated? And one of my clients, Karen, recently shared that she no longer focuses her food or exercise on weight. Rather, she listens to her body and chooses what's going to make her feel well and happy. And social and emotional well-being is so important to every area of our life, including our health. Spending time with friends and family, taking rest breaks, and managing stress are recognised as important components of overall health independent of weight. However, these choices will help you to support a healthier weight too. So, just a little recap on health-focused alternatives to dieting. Mindful and intuitive eating help you to listen to your hunger and fullness cues to enjoy food without restriction or guilt. Weight inclusive or health at every size encourages you to look at health behaviours that will improve your health without focusing on weight. Eating a balanced and varied range of foods where no foods are excluded, especially no food group is excluded. Small lifestyle changes lead to those realistic and sustainable goals. And again, I love that saying, small steps lead to big change. Joyful movement. I can't help but say that with a smile on my face. And this is physical activity that you do for your enjoyment as well as your well-being. Social and emotional well-being is so important for stress management, social connection, and self-care. And as I said, all of those things help us to maintain a healthy and enjoyable way of eating and a weight that is best for us. So, how do we actually shift our focus from weight to overall health? Because as I said before, our brains and our heart space have been wired that we have to lose weight. So first up, it's helpful to think about that broader definition of health from the World Health Organization, recognizing that health is multidimensional. It includes physical, emotional, social, intellectual, spiritual, and environmental aspects, not just body weight. And work towards adopting a weight-inclusive mindset for yourself and for others. I always think when you go to a swimming pool or you go to a beach, we are blessed with the wide range of shapes and sizes of the human body, and not one is better than the other. And we have the opportunity to take care of the body that we have been born into, as do other people. But just a hint here too, we have to be careful not to make judgment of people who we feel are not taking the best care of themselves. This is a very complicated topic and I'm not going to go into it now, but we have the opportunity to invest in our own health, but we can't make others join the health path with us. That has to be a personal choice. Certainly setting little lifestyle, eating changing goals for ourselves rather than weight-based goals is a good step forward as well. And building enjoyable and sustainable habits, and that's about taking one step at a time. And the right steps for you. And this is why the mindfulness and intuitive way of eating is really important, because it helps us find what's best for us. practicing self-compassion and mindfulness. I talk about this all the time. Be kind and patient with yourself. Learning to reconnect to your mind and body takes practice, but also patience and kindness. Don't try and do this by yourself. If you've been trying for weeks, months, years, decades to feel comfortable in your body, to find what weight is right for you, then seek professional support, because you're not going to get out of that cycle otherwise. And you can do it at any age. It doesn't matter. It's never too late, but just put your hand up for support. And one way you can get this support is joining us for our workshop, our online live workshop, Beyond Diets, the missing link to confident eating and healthy weight. It's happening May 6th, International No Diet Day at 7 p.m. Sydney time. And the link to join is included with this episode's notes. However, if you are unable to make the workshop, or you're really ready for personalized support and ready to go beyond diets for a lasting solution, then join me in a free mindful eating strategy call. And I have provided the link to this in this episode's notes. If you're viewing this episode on YouTube, you're most welcome to scan the QR code. So thanks for listening. And if you have enjoyed this episode, please let us know why and join the No Diet movement and share this episode on your social media pages. I look forward to sharing with you again next week. You have been listening to the Eating For You podcast with Sally-Ann Pisk. If a long-term way of healthier eating is of interest to you, then make sure you subscribe to our podcast.